Arupavachara Dhyāna, or the Formless Absorptions, represents an advanced stage of meditative concentration in Buddhism. These states go beyond the physical world, transcending both material and conceptual attachments. They allow practitioners to directly engage with subtler dimensions of consciousness and experience a profound sense of detachment from the self and external forms. These states are cultivated after mastering the Arupavachara Dhyānas, or form absorptions, and are seen as essential tools for loosening the bonds of attachment and understanding impermanence on a deeper level. I recommend checking out the video on Arupavachara Dhyānas. You can find the link to it in the description box of this video. The first stage is the sphere of infinite space, or akasananyayatana. The journey into the formless absorptions begins with the sphere of infinite space, the first level of Arupavachara Dhyāna, or formless absorptions. This meditative state involves a radical shift in focus, where the practitioner moves beyond attachment to any material or mental object. Instead, attention is directed toward the perception of limitless space. By contemplating the boundless nature of space, the meditator lets go of all notions of form and boundaries, entering an immersive experience of vastness and infinity. This is not simply an intellectual or imaginative exercise, but a profound, direct encounter with the perception of infinite space. The process requires deep concentration and the ability to sustain awareness on the idea of boundlessness without distraction. The mind gradually becomes absorbed in the sense of infinite space, transcending physical and mental limitations. To understand this experience, consider the example of looking at the sky. At first glance, the sky appears finite, confined by the horizon or the edges of your field of vision. These boundaries are projections of your mind, rooted in habitual perceptions of limitation. However, as you consciously let go of these imposed borders, the sky opens up, revealing its infinite and limitless nature. In meditation, this principle is applied on a much deeper level. The meditator extends their contemplation to all dimensions of space, dissolving any notion of boundaries or separations, and embraces the sheer vastness of existence. This state of absorption fosters a profound sense of detachment from the material world. By focusing on the infinite, the practitioner loosens their grip on the idea of self, which is often tied to physical and conceptual boundaries. The realization that all perceived limits are constructs of the mind helps the meditator move closer to understanding the illusory nature of form and individuality. The sphere of infinite space is not an endpoint, but a stepping stone in the meditative journey. It prepares the mind for even subtler levels of awareness by encouraging the practitioner to transcend attachment to form. This meditative absorption lays the groundwork for progressing into the deeper formless realms, such as the sphere of infinite consciousness, where even the perception of space is surpassed. In this state, the meditator gains valuable insights into the impermanent and constructed nature of all phenomena. By releasing attachment to form and materiality, they cultivate a spacious and liberated mind, free from the confines of habitual thought patterns. This profound detachment nurtures inner peace and prepares the practitioner for deeper spiritual realizations. The second stage is the sphere of infinite consciousness, or vijñānañkayatana. Building on the experience of infinite space, achieved in the previous meditative state, the practitioner progresses to the sphere of infinite consciousness. In this stage, the focus shifts inward, moving away from the vast external concept of space to the internal realm of awareness itself. The meditator begins to reflect on the boundless nature of consciousness, realizing that awareness is not confined to the self, the body, or any material form. Instead, consciousness is understood as an infinite, all-encompassing reality that transcends physical limitations. To grasp this concept, consider the analogy of a mirror reflecting the sky. The sky is vast and without end, and while the mirror itself is finite in form, its ability to reflect the expanse of the sky has no limits. In the same way, the meditator recognizes that their mind, though seemingly tied to an individual identity, has the capacity to experience infinite awareness. The mind becomes a vessel for realizing the unbounded nature of consciousness, free from the constraints of time, space, or personal identity. At this level of meditation, the practitioner shifts their attention entirely to the awareness that was observing infinite space in the previous stage. They realize that this very awareness is itself limitless. This profound insight helps dissolve the illusion that consciousness is localized or tied to any one entity. The meditator moves beyond identifying consciousness as mine or as something belonging to the self. Instead, consciousness is seen as universal and all-pervasive, existing independently of any physical or conceptual boundary. This realization fosters a deep sense of expansiveness, allowing the practitioner to transcend the dualistic thinking of self versus other. The mind lets go of attachments to the physical world and the constructs of individuality. For example, just as a wave realizes it is part of the vast ocean, the meditator begins to see their awareness as part of a larger, boundless field of consciousness. This shift brings profound peace and freedom from egoic constraints, as the meditator no longer perceives consciousness as confined or limited. Furthermore, the sphere of infinite consciousness prepares the practitioner for even deeper levels of meditative absorption. By recognizing that awareness itself is free from boundaries, the mind becomes increasingly detached from subtle constructs and conditioned experiences. This detachment is not a withdrawal from reality, but a deep clarity that sees through illusions and grasps the true nature of existence. This stage lays the foundation for advancing to the next levels of meditative practice, where even the constructs of infinite consciousness are transcended. It offers a profound glimpse into the nature of awareness as vast, ungraspable, and free from all limitations. Through this realization, the practitioner moves closer to ultimate freedom and clarity, shedding layers of attachment and deepening their understanding of reality. The third stage is the sphere of nothingness, or akinkanyayatana. After mastering the sphere of infinite consciousness, the practitioner progresses to an even more refined state, known as the sphere of nothingness, or akinkanyayatana. In this meditative absorption, the mind transcends the perception of awareness itself and shifts its focus to the experience of nothingness, or the absence of something. It is crucial to understand that this state is not about nihilism, rejection, or negation of existence. Instead, it represents an experiential insight into the absence of inherent existence within phenomena. To better grasp this concept, consider the analogy of dismantling a cart. A cart, as we perceive it, exists only as a combination of its parts: wheels, axle, shafts, and so on. When these parts are separated, the cart as a unified entity ceases to exist. What remains is merely a collection of components, none of which inherently constitute a cart. Similarly, in the sphere of nothingness, the meditator deconstructs mental constructs and perceptions, letting go of the idea that there is anything inherently substantial or lasting. The focus becomes the awareness of nothingness, free from attachment to specific forms or constructs. To reach the sphere of nothingness, the practitioner must relinquish even the subtle awareness developed in previous meditative stages. In the sphere of infinite consciousness, the meditator experiences an expansive and boundless awareness of awareness itself. However, in this new state, the meditator lets go of that vast awareness, dissolving the perception of something to rest in the experience of absence. This process is not one of suppressing or denying the mind's activity, but of seeing through its constructed nature. The mind, often tethered to objects or concepts, learns to recognize that these are temporary and conditional. By observing the absence of a central or inherent essence, the practitioner uncovers a profound sense of detachment. This stage trains the mind to exist without clinging to any mental or conceptual framework, opening the door to deeper realizations. The sphere of nothingness marks a significant turning point in the meditative journey. By meditating on the absence of inherent substance in all phenomena, the practitioner cultivates a deeper understanding of two core Buddhist principles: impermanence, or anicca, and non-self, or anatta. In this state, the mind becomes less bound to the illusions of permanence and identity, fostering a profound sense of freedom from attachment. This refined detachment is not cold or indifferent, but liberating. The meditator learns to experience phenomena without clinging or aversion. For example, the realization that nothingness does not signify a void or loss, but rather the absence of inherent substance, offers a liberating perspective on life's transience. The meditator understands that holding on to forms, ideas, or identities only leads to suffering. Letting go of these constructs brings peace and clarity. As the meditator rests in the sphere of nothingness, they are preparing for the most subtle and challenging levels of absorption, such as the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. The insights gained in this stage, particularly the experiential understanding of impermanence and non-self, serve as essential groundwork. By repeatedly immersing themselves in the awareness of nothingness, the meditator further loosens the ego's grip and deepens their detachment from the constructed reality of the mind. The sphere of nothingness is not an endpoint, but a gateway to profound spiritual growth. It lays the foundation for realizing ultimate freedom, where even the subtlest clinging to mental states or identities dissolves. This stage underscores the transformative power of meditation, leading the practitioner closer to liberation or nirvana. The sphere of nothingness is a meditative state of extraordinary depth and subtlety. It challenges the practitioner to let go of even the most subtle mental constructs and to rest in the absence of something. Through analogies like dismantling a cart, we can appreciate how this state deconstructs perceptions to reveal the impermanent and insubstantial nature of existence. This insight is not only a cornerstone of Buddhist meditation, but also a transformative realization that guides the practitioner toward ultimate freedom and awakening. The final stage is the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, or nevasanyana sanyayatana. The sphere of neither perception nor non-perception represents the final and most refined level of meditative absorption in the realm of formless attainments, or Arupavachara Dhyāna. At this stage, the activity of the mind becomes so subtle that it defies ordinary categorization. It is a state where perception exists in its faintest form, but is so minimal and nuanced that it cannot be described as either fully present or entirely absent. This profound state of meditation embodies the ultimate stillness and refinement of the mind, where all dualistic concepts dissolve, leaving only an unshakable sense of peace and equanimity. To understand this stage, Consider the analogy of a flame that is so faint it is almost imperceptible. The flame is neither completely extinguished nor actively burning. It exists in a delicate, nearly invisible state. Similarly, in the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, the mind is present, but without the usual mental engagement, activity, or recognition of objects that characterize perception in everyday experience. This is not a state of unconsciousness. Instead, it is an exceptionally subtle level of awareness that transcends the ordinary boundaries of mental activity. In this state, the meditator experiences profound equanimity, a complete absence of mental agitation or restlessness. There is no grasping at sensory experiences or conceptual thoughts, as the mind has transcended the coarser layers of perception and existence. Dualities such as existence versus non-existence, self versus other, or awareness versus non-awareness no longer apply. The mind is so refined and balanced that it rests in a space beyond these contrasts. For example, a meditator who has reached this level might sit for extended periods in deep absorption, free from the need to label or interact with experiences. The usual mental chatter and sense of I are entirely absent, replaced by an indescribable stillness. The meditator does not actively engage. He'd be engaged with the thoughts, memories, or sensations, yet there remains a faint thread of presence, an awareness that defies conventional understanding. Despite its extraordinary refinement, the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception is still a conditioned state, meaning it arises due to specific causes and conditions and is not permanent. While it provides immense tranquility and mental clarity, it is not the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice. Instead, it serves as a powerful platform for insight meditation or vipassana, where practitioners investigate the true nature of reality, including the impermanence or anicca, unsatisfactoriness or dukkha, and non-self or anatta of all phenomena. For instance, after emerging from this absorption, a meditator might reflect on the impermanence of even the most refined mental states, understanding that even this sublime experience is transient and dependent on causes. This reflection can deepen their understanding of the conditioned nature of all experiences and further loosen their attachment to the self and the material world. The sphere of neither perception nor non-perception marks the culmination of the formless absorptions, but it is not the final destination in Buddhist practice. It serves as a preparatory ground for deeper realizations. When the meditator turns their focused and purified mind toward the ultimate truths of existence, they gain insights that pave the way for liberation or nirvana. For example, while resting in this state, the meditator might begin to understand the emptiness or shunyata of all phenomena, realizing that there is no inherent self or permanence in any experience, including the formless states. This realization helps the practitioner detach from even the most subtle forms of clinging, clearing the path toward ultimate freedom. The sphere of neither perception nor non-perception is one of the most profound and tranquil states a human mind can achieve. It represents the pinnacle of meditative concentration, where perception exists only in its faintest trace. This state offers extraordinary peace and equanimity, providing a fertile ground for deep insights into the nature of reality. However, in the broader framework of Buddhism, it is a conditioned experience and a tool rather than an endpoint. By transcending even this sublime state, practitioners move closer to the unconditioned liberation of nirvana. In summary, while the Arupavachara Dhyanas represent advanced meditative states achieved through deep concentration, their principles hold valuable lessons for daily living. These states encourage practitioners to expand their perspective, offering insights that transcend ordinary ways of thinking. For example, the contemplation of infinite space, one of the stages of formless absorption, reminds us that our sense of boundaries and limitations is often self-imposed. By reflecting on the vastness of space, we can place our personal problems into a larger context, reducing stress and cultivating a sense of detachment from trivial concerns. Similarly, contemplating the absence of inherent existence helps us recognize that clinging to fixed ideas about ourselves or the world only leads to unnecessary suffering. These meditative insights highlight the impermanence and boundless nature of reality, teaching us that clinging to material forms or rigid concepts of self is not only futile, but also counterproductive to inner peace. For instance, when faced with challenges at work or in relationships, a broader perspective inspired by these formless states can remind us that the difficulties we perceive are transient. By loosening our attachment to specific outcomes or judgments, we create space for flexibility, creativity, and acceptance in our responses. The Arupavachara Dhyānas also emphasize the importance of inner stillness. In daily life, this translates to finding moments of quiet amid the noise of routine activities. Whether through mindful breathing, pausing before reacting, or simply observing thoughts without judgment, we can integrate the calm cultivated in these meditative states into our everyday interactions. This inner stillness allows us to detach from the mental constructs that often dominate our thinking, such as rigid beliefs about success, failure, or identity, and instead approach life with openness and curiosity. Furthermore, these absorptions remind us of the illusions created by our attachment to self and materiality. For example, we often identify strongly with roles, possessions, or achievements, believing they define our worth. By applying the lessons of the formless absorptions, we can recognize these attachments as fleeting and, ultimately, inconsequential. This realization doesn't lead to apathy, but rather to freedom, the freedom to live authentically, without the need for constant validation or fear of loss. When integrated into daily life, the lessons of Arupavachara Dhyānas promote greater peace, clarity, and compassion. By embracing impermanence and boundlessness, we become less reactive to life's ups and downs, more patient with others, and more attuned to the present moment. This shift in perspective reduces suffering and fosters a sense of equanimity, bringing us closer to the ultimate goal of liberation. In essence, the formless absorptions are not just lofty meditative attainments, but practical tools for transforming our relationship with ourselves and the world around us. Thank you for joining me on this spiritual journey. I warmly encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments, as it opens up a two-way conversation and helps me connect with others, walking the spiritual path. Thank you.